Here at the Ark, we take on and give homes to rescued animals from the exotic pet trade. And for this first video, I thought, rather than going for maybe some of the bigger and more obvious animals, we'd start with these guys, Tanukis, who are the perfect example of the work we do here. Now, the Tanuki is a small wild canine found in Southeast Asia and the islands around Japan. And there's various subspecies of these guys. Unfortunately, a few years ago, there was a trend of wanting people to keep these as an exotic alternative to a small dog. Unfortunately, they don't make great pets. They don't tame down particularly well, nor do they toilet train or obedience train particularly well either. And they're not going to sit upside down on your lap for a belly rub while you watch EastEnders. And unfortunately, what happened when people realised they don't make good pets, unfortunately, lots of them were abandoned or even let loose. As in the case of this little fella here. Sukuu here was found wandering around the town here in Lincolnshire, the town of Boston. He'd been spotted a few times overnight, but no one got a really good look at him, so a lot of people thought he was just a feral dog. But then someone took a photograph of him and sent it to the police, who then contacted us, and it was realised that no, he wasn't just a domesticated dog, he was actually a Tanuki, also known as the Japanese raccoon dog. Most likely abandoned after someone realised that they don't make good pets anymore, and we were called in to catch him. And after 2 nights of trying and sort of plotting his moves and finding out where he'd been living, we worked out he'd been living in an apple orchard in this village, and he'd been surviving on apples. And that's one of the fascinating things about these little wild dogs. Actually, 50% of their diet in the wild, although you think of these guys as being carnivores, is actually made up of fruit and vegetables. So he's sustaining himself on fallen apples from this apple tree. When he came to us, although he'd lost a bit of weight, he was still in reasonably good health and good condition. But now, as you can see, he's much happier, and he's now living alongside Cloud, another rescue Tanuki who came into us. Now, why is she so different from Sukuu over there? Well, Sukuu is what they'd look like in the wild. He's sort of the natural colour occurrence. Little old Cloud here, she's what we call a leucistic Tanuki. So she's a type of albino. She's lacking pigmentation, and these guys are, again, specifically bred for this appearance for the pet trade. So although she looks completely different, she is exactly the same species as this handsome chap here, Sukuu. Now, these guys in the wild, they are fascinating animals. The Tanuki is in fact the only wild canine that can actually do a form of hibernation, similar to a bear. So when it gets really, really cold, these guys can hibernate and sleep away the worst of the winter, which is why they could become a potential problem here in the UK. The Tanuki is listed as an invasive species. This is an animal that, if it were to get loose here in the UK, has the potential to be able to set up a breeding population, which could then have a knock-on negative effect for our very own UK wildlife, as these guys would be out competing it potentially. And it is a big problem in Norway. There are many thousands of these guys living in the wild now, where they unfortunately got loose, and they're doing really well. So although we always think of Asia as being a warm climate, where these guys come from in the more mountainous regions, it can in fact be very, very cold. So the UK winter would hold no problems for these guys, and being an opportunistic omnivore, just as Sukuu was when he was living wild and eating fallen apples, these guys would readily find sources of food here in the UK, so they could become a real problem for our UK wildlife, which is now why they are listed as an invasive species. So we have to make sure these guys never get out into the wild and could affect our UK wildlife, especially amphibians. These guys do have a real taste for frogs and toads and newts. Here we go, guys. So that's just one of our many rescue stories, and I hope to be introducing over the next few months to many more.